Let me show you a couple of signposts. This is a signpost in a wilderness somewhere. These are inside of your notes. Notice the multiple directions. Which way are you supposed to go? Okay? Which way? Well, according to that signpost, you can go any way you want. And that's the idea of these next 10 things I'm going to show you, is that this is not in an order. Okay, if I can put them in a circle, I would, but it would be confusing. They do go one after the other. But these are things that you need to do for yourself as they come up inside of yourself. Don't think, well, if I can just do one and go through two, because now we're thinking about grief and mourning as a process. I'm going to do step one. Now I'm done with step one. Now I'm going to go to step two. Now I'm done with step two. I'm going to go to step three. And then when you find yourself reverting back to step one, you go, oh no, what's wrong with me? Nothing. This is not something that is predictable in a pattern, and I'll show you this as we go through here. So the whole idea of grief and mourning is that there's freedom in this. It's not necessarily linear. Most of the time it's circular. And you end up sometimes going around and then back and around. The goal is to work the hard work of mourning, that you just put forth that effort. And when you do that, I believe transformation is more likely to happen. The first thing that's on your list is to be open to your loss. This sounds so psychobabblish, but the idea here is that you are not going to deny or ignore what you're feeling. If you feel anger, you're going to acknowledge that I feel anger. If you feel depression, I'm going to acknowledge that I feel that. If you feel fear, I'm going to acknowledge that that's real, and I'm not going to shut it off and pretend it doesn't exist. I'm going to deal with what's right in front of me. I'm going to be open to this. And that's a brave step, because sometimes it's a little bit easier to say, I'm just going to go through this funeral and I'm going to get on with my life. When people ask me, how are you? I'm going to say, good. And just not go there. I don't want to go there. And there's times to go there, and there are times not to go there. When the clerk at JCPenney says, how are you? That's probably not the time to go, I'm feeling a sense of loss. That's probably not the right spot to do that. But when a good friend says to you, how are you? And you feel safe, you're able to say, terrible. I feel torn up inside, and I just want to cry. And that good friend says, bring it. Come on, just let it go. Or if you're a dude, you stand there and go, all right, go right ahead. And then because we dudes don't know how to do that very well. And are we supposed to hug, touch, hand? What are we supposed to do there? I don't know. Maybe there's a man book we can find that tells us how to do that. But you feel that you can just let that out. But be open to that sense of loss. Don't deny it. Don't push it aside. Be open to that. The next one is be realistic in this process. These all kind of happen at once. They happen at different times. But you need to be realistic in your grief and in your mourning. And I got a couple of unrealistic and realistic things to think about as you go through this. So an unrealistic expectation. I'm kind of big on expectations. I think they set the tone for a lot of things. That's why they're called expectations. You expected this to happen. An unrealistic expectation is grief and mourning are the same. They are not. And I hope you see the difference between the two. Grief is inward, mourning is outward, and you need to do the hard work of both. So an unrealistic expectation, they're the same. I feel sad, therefore, unlessly I've mourned, everything is good. No, there's two different things there. These are two different emotions. Progress is predictable and in an orderly manner. Say that right. Progress is predictable and happens in an orderly manner, that there will be the phases of grief or this, and I just move my way through this. That's not how this works. It's unpredictable. It's not orderly. When was the last time you had deep senses of grief and you felt, look, this is happening right on schedule. I feel very much in control and like this is just work. It doesn't work that way. When you're going through it, everything seems to be convoluted and jumbled up in your head and you're just at a loss. Please understand, it will not progress in a predictable, orderly manner. You might find yourself moving 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. According to math, that's still 1 step forward. Okay? You might go 5 forward and 4 back. That's great. You might spend one day taking 3 back. That's okay. There isn't a timeline on this in the sense of you have 6 months and then you should be done with this. And that's what they've done. Alan Wolfelt told us that they've called it clinical depression begins 14 days after somebody is feeling somewhat depressed or lost. Let me give you some of the symptoms of depression. If you're feeling these emotions after 14 days, then you are clinically depressed. And he says, you respond, let me see, don't accept support, you're irritable and complain, you don't relate your feelings very well, you exhibit an all-pervading sense of doom, you project a sense of hopelessness and chronic emptiness, you have chronic physical complaints, you have generalized feelings of guilt, you feel a deep and ongoing loss of self-esteem. That's depression, and it sounds a whole lot like grief and mourning. And they say if you feel those things after 14 days, then you're clinically depressed. And that's terrible, because what you really are is going through grief and mourning. And so you got to give yourself time to just to kind of feel your way through it. It's not going to progress in some orderly fashion to where I should be done by now. It doesn't work that way. It never has. Move away from grief, an unrealistic expectation, not toward it. Well, I feel bad, so I'm just not going to go there. I'm just going to avoid that place altogether. And there might be a season in your life where you're not going to go there. I haven't gone to Ruby's yet in Anaheim. That's where Dad and I used to go to breakfast all the time. So when I was out there sometime in September, Mom says, you want to go to Ruby's? Not yet. Not yet. We'll go there another time. I have a hard enough time walking through our Home Depot. So we're not going to go to Ruby's just yet. One day we will, and we'll order eggs over easy and bacon, and we'll do all that, but not today. But don't move away from grief. Unrealistic is you move away from grief, not toward it. What you really should do is just don't duck. So when you see it coming, don't go, oh, I'm going to run over here so I don't have to deal with that. What I think you should do is when you see it coming, going, here it comes. I'm just going to let this happen. I'm just going to be okay. So every time we meet on Wednesdays to talk about music for Sunday. And so we talk about it. We kind of kick it around. And every time I see Good Father, I want to say, nope, not doing that one. I'm the pastor. I get the final say of that song. But I don't. I'm not going to duck. We're just going to sing that song, and we're going to be okay. And so don't duck. Just let it happen. If you see it coming, if all of a sudden that hits you and you're like, oh, I feel it, don't go, nope, I'm going to close that off. And don't do that, because you're stifling what's trying to come out naturally. Don't worry about it if it doesn't, but when it tries to, the best thing you can do is just say, okay, we're going to cry here for a minute, or we're going to have a seized up throat here for a minute, and I'm just going to sit here and go, phew. My mom and brothers and sister, we call them waves. And we put word pictures around it because these emotions are too much. So we have to come up with words to express this. And we read an article about waves. And so every now and then I'll say, Mom, how you doing? She says, pretty wavy today. Pretty wavy today. And we all know what she's feeling. And so when you see the wave coming, don't go, no. Just go, well, we're going to ride the wave. And then when it passes, we're going to smile. And then keep plowing. Just keep going. And so don't duck. Let it happen. When it comes at you, just let it come. And then deal with it as it comes. And don't worry about it if it doesn't come. It will come when it comes. I think your brain is extremely powerful, and it knows when you can handle things. And so it will only give you what you can handle. There's also a Bible verse about that. Remember, he's only going to give you what he knows you can handle. And so when it comes, deal with it. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. Because in time it may, or it may not. The worst thing you can do is go, I should be crying. I'm going to make myself cry. And then you don't. Then you feel even worse. You say, well, I just haven't done that yet. And I'm okay. It's okay. When it happens, it'll happen. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And it's okay. Don't worry about it. An unrealistic thing is tears of grief are only signs of weakness. It's ultimately false. And you might get that in a passive way. Well, if you really believed, if you knew where they were, you wouldn't be grieving and mourning. Yeah, you would. They're gone. And you should feel a sense of loss. And so it's unrealistic. It involves a wide variety of different thoughts and feelings. So you might feel anger. You might feel fear. You might feel just a sense of lostness. Those are all part of it. And it's okay. So allow those emotions to run their course inside of your heart and in your life. Be realistic about it. The next one is being upset and openly mourning are being weak in your faith. I didn't word that right either. That means you're a sign of weaknesses. And they're not. They're signs to me of strength. It's a very strong person who's not afraid to cry. It's okay. They're not songs you need to feel it to heal it. It's kind of like pain. If you don't feel it, you can't grab that and nurse it and hold it. You've got to feel it to heal it. If you feel it, that's good. Yay, you're a human. If somebody were to die and you went, well, I'd kind of be worried about you. If someone who was really close to you passed away and you said, that's all right, we'll be fine. That's odd. Okay? So you need to feel it to heal it. If you don't feel it, you can't heal it. You don't even know it's there. So don't be afraid if all of a sudden you feel it. It's only the physical loss of a person, of that person. It's just the physical loss. They're just not here. What you need to know about it is you feel the loss in every aspect of your life. Physical, relational, emotional, spiritual. Everything is impacted by that loss. And that's normal and that's natural. It's not just one thing. Well, he was the planner. I missed that part of him. He was everything. He planned it all. He was a part of your whole life. And so it's not just compartmentalized into one little thing. It's everything. Be realistic about that. You should try not to think about them. Well, if I just maybe don't think about them, I'll be okay. No, you won't. I mean, you might not cry. You might not emote. You might not feel that sense of fear, anger, or loss, but you will not be okay. You are going to feel it in some way, shape, or form. It's going to come out of you, and you need to let it come out of you. So realistic is you will think about them often, and you should, and that's okay. That's okay. In fact, one of the stories that came out of our little conference we went to is this lady had lost her husband, and he worked at a bank, and he was a C-level type guy at the bank, and this was back in the day when they did portraits of the bank officers. Do you ever remember seeing those? They're up in the lobby somewhere, and the bank was going through a Reno project, and they found a picture of her lost husband. And so they called, and they said, would you like this portrait of your husband? And she said yes. And so they brought the picture to her, and she put it in her living room on the chair. And every night at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, when she would get home from her day, she'd get a glass of wine, and she would sit in the chair across from his picture, and she would tell him about her day. Unhealthy? Unhealthy? Very healthy. It's okay. Now, Dr. Wellfield said, if she is putting pictures of him on every wall surface and ceiling of her house, that's probably not a healthy sign. Okay? But that was their ritual when they were married for 30 some odd years. They would come home, he'd pour her a glass of wine, she would have a glass of wine, and they would sit and just talk. And so when she sat down next to the picture, she's just sharing her day and talking about things. And it was a very healthy thing. But like I said, if there was every surface covered, that's a different story. But that's where she thought of him, and that's what they did together. And so she thought about him often. You'll get over this as soon as possible. There is no hurry to this. This is not something you get over, through, or by. It's something that prayerfully transforms you from the inside out. And you become altogether different as a result of this. It transforms you into more like Christ Jesus. An unrealistic thing is that nobody can help, that you're alone, that nobody's gone through this before. The reality is you need other people to help you. You need to invite them in. Find that person who's safe and say, I need to talk. And they're not going to try to solve you, analyze you, kind of figure out where you are on the cycle of these emotions and try to get you. No, they're just going to sit there and go, how you feeling? And they're just going to let you talk. And when you go to a funeral, don't think that you have to come up with all the answers. Just be there and love them. Honor them by just being present. And so when it comes to this, you need other people who can help you through this. You will one day not grieve or mourn over them. One day this will be over, and I won't have these emotions. Well, the reality is your grief will probably hurt more before it hurts less, but you will not always feel this bad. It'll always be there. It might not be as bad, but it will always be there. It's like that senior adult who wrote that article about the waves that I referenced. He said, the water, there's always a wave, always. But sometimes there's a lot more peace in between the wave. It's just a lot steadier, but there's always a wave. I always feel that sense of loss. But he's able to reconcile himself to that and be okay. He's learned to ride the waves and to be able to absorb them into his normal ebb and flow. And so over time, you too will be able to ride that wave, feel it, and be able to move through it and again be transformed by it as it comes over top of you. But those are some unrealistic expectations, and don't ever buy into those unrealistic things. It'll end you up in a ditch every single time. You need people around you. You need to feel those emotions. You need a safe place to where they can come out so that you can be transformed by grief in mourning. Let me show you a couple other signposts, just different things. You need to be open to your grief. You need to know what's realistic, and those are inside of your notes. This next one is this, that as you go through this, you need to explore your feelings of loss. Again, that sounds awfully psychobabble type stuff, but you need to explore that. Allow it to kind of just ferment in your mind and allow it and dwell on it and think about it and allow it to just run its course. Explore that feeling and those emotions you have for them. Don't be quick to get through it. Just allow it to be there and explore those emotions of loss. Embrace your uniqueness. Nobody is going to grieve just like you do. Nobody is going to mourn just like you do. You're a unique person and you're going to feel it in a unique way. It's okay to do that. I was drive by Ector County Cemetery over here, and every now and then you'll see a lady out there and she's sitting at the headstone of her loved one. I don't know if it's her son or husband. I don't know the story there, but I'll see that she's out there and it looks like she's quilting something. That's what she's doing. You might look at that and go, that's weird. Well, maybe they quilted together. Maybe that was their thing and she feels a sense of connectivity to that lost loved one, and that's just their unique thing. Now, if she's out there all day, every day, quilting, we might need to talk about a few things, but that's her unique connective point to that person. Maybe it's on the birthday of that loved one who passed away. That's okay. Everybody is unique in how they experience mourning. You need to embrace yours. If that's your unique way, it's okay. Just allow it to run its course. Another signpost is, you're not crazy. All right? When you go through grief and you go through the loss of a loved one, you're not going to think straight. You're not going to remember things. You're going to lose your keys. You're going to forget how to get places. You're going to get lost in your own house. You're not going to sleep at night. You're going to sleep during the day, or you might not sleep at all. You might not want to eat. You might not remember your children's name as quickly as you used to. You're just not going to remember things. You're not crazy. That's normal stuff. There's a lot of details that go into when somebody passes away. There's a lot of things that have to be juggled and rearranged and all of that. And if you don't remember all of those things, you're not crazy. That happens. And it's okay. I remember my mom, for the first 3 months, everything was just in a fog. And I remember telling her the same thing a couple different times and her going, I must be going nuts. This is crazy. You're not crazy, Mom. I mean, not any more than any other mom that had 3 boys and a daughter, but you're not crazy. This just impacts everything that goes through you. And you're going to forget things. You're going to feel like you're losing your brain. You're not. It's called grief and mourning. Just allow it to, I'm not crazy. I don't need an institution or a straitjacket. This is normal of how things progress. Needs, you need to understand the 6 needs of mourning. And I put a whole paragraph inside of your book. I don't have time to go through all of this today, but my mom actually sent that to me yesterday. And when you look at your 6 needs of mourning, we won't talk deeply about these, but you need to acknowledge the reality of death. Don't deny it. This actually happened. You need to embrace the pain of loss. You need to remember the person who died. You need developing a new self-identity, because everything is going to change. And you're going to have to come up with a new self-identity, even if they were grandchildren or sons, not just a spouse. You're going to come up with a whole new sense of who you are, because they're not there. They made up a part of who you are, and you're going to have to develop that. A search for meaning, especially if they were partners with you in a certain facet of your life. You're going to have that's going to change a little bit. It's going to change a lot. So you're going to have a new sense of meaning, and then you're going to need ongoing support. It's not like, okay, it's been 6 months, we don't need to call her anymore. She should be fine. It's not true. It's going to be something that they're going to need ongoing support, just ongoing phone calls, and that's why you need that group of companions who are going to come alongside of you, and you're going to give them permission to speak truth into you. There's more. Dr. Wolfelt wrote a whole bunch about that, and you can read through that inside of your notes. Another signpost is that reaching out, and this might be very difficult, to reach out to those who are around you and ask for help. Hey, do you got time for a coffee? Yes. If they're a good friend, they're going to say yes. They're going to make time for you, but you need to reach out to some, because some people don't know what to do when somebody goes through losses, so they just get all tongue-tied and they don't know how to respond. You might need to reach out to them and invite them in to where you are in that process of being lost. This next one is to be kind to yourself. And so if you are going through this and you just feel like today's going to be a bad day, then just let it be a bad day. It's just going to be a bad day. You might call in sick that day. Why? Because I remember Dan Wheeler was driving through L.A., so he swung through my mom's house, and she had a whole bunch of tools that my dad had, and so he loaded them up in the truck, and he drove them home, and he brought them home on a Sunday, and so we unloaded them in the garage, and I was kind of distracted by that on Monday, so we had our staff meeting, and then at 11:30 I went home, and I unpacked tools all afternoon, just putting tools away. I'm just going to stay here and put tools away, and just be kind to yourself. And, well, you should be at work. Not today. Today we're rearranging stuff. And you might do that. You might have that experience where I just feel sad today. Then feel sad today. Give yourself a break. Well, I should be better by now. Says who? Who says that? Who says you're late in your grief and mourning? You need to hurry up. Where's that clock that says that? It's not there. Okay? And so be kind to yourself. If you feel that emotion, I just feel like sitting down for a while. Then sit down for a while. I just feel like being quiet. Then be quiet. Be kind to what's going on inside of you, because you probably don't understand it. And so it just needs to work its way through you. So get rid of the self-expectations that you're better by now, or that happened 5 years ago and you're still... Just allow it to run its course. Be kind to yourself. The next one is be transformed. Allow it to remodel you from the inside out. Allow it to just cause you to look at people differently. Because sometimes you go through a sense of loss and you would say, well, I don't want to get that close to anybody ever again. It's kind of like my feelings about dogs. You know, I had Kayla, and she was a great dog. We went through a lot together, and when she died, I don't want to have another dog. And so I've got a little Ranger dog. It's my daughter's dog. And Ranger and I have a love, mostly hate relationship. You stay over there. Because if I start loving you, I'm going to feel that pain again, because you're going to die. Because they always do. And I'm not going to go through that again. And so but sometimes, as silly as it is with dogs, you might do that with people. It's like, well, that really hurt, and they died, and maybe it was a tragic death, maybe it was a suicide, maybe it was something that it was a long sickness. You think, I'm just not going to let people get that close to me again. I'm just not. You're not allowing it to transform you. And what you should really experience is, through this process, I've learned to love at a whole new level, because it's the 2-minute warning. Life is short. And so we take our kids to funerals when it's appropriate. We take them because I want my children to understand that this is not forever and that they need to love. And so we took them to a funeral. The first one we took them to, they did not know the deceased. Melanie and I did. It was Bonnie Bowden's funeral. And she was a longtime member of our church, and she passed away. And we went to the service, and we took Brooke and Carson because we want them to know that life is short. And so you must love. Don't wait for the last 2 minutes. You've got to love now. And then when my dad died, that wasn't their first funeral. And they've been to other funerals here at the church. They know that this is what happens. And that's why we love now. And that's letting this transform you. Embrace it. This is how life works. And if you can let it transform you, then you'll love deeply and more connected. And you'll feel more. It's just a natural byproduct of that. And then the last one there, he calls it, Alan Wolfelt, who I recommend everything that he has written. It's great material. He calls it being reconciled to the death or to the loss. And what he's trying to say is that you're okay with it. And I don't know if you ever get to that place where you're okay with it, where it all makes sense. I like to think that I can be transformed by it, and I can abide with Christ in it. And you should do all these things all at one time, but Jesus invites us to abide in him. And then he nurtures our souls as we go through that. And so going through grief and mourning without a sense of who Jesus is and having him as your Savior, it truly is a hopeless proposition, because there is no great awakening. It's just what it is. And that's why it's so important to know that he died on the cross for your sins, and he rose from the grave. And that's how we can grieve with hope, knowing that one day we will see both him and our loved one when we get to that place. But we abide in him, and we allow that grief and that sense of loss to just transform our hearts and remold us from the inside out. And hopefully, by doing so, we love deeper. We appreciate more, because one day they're not going to be here. And so we're going to take our time and be transformed by these emotions that are running through our hearts and through our minds. And it's interesting when you go through loss like this, and then you bump into somebody who has, there's almost an instant connection if you let it. I got on the plane coming back after my dad's service, sat down next to this lady, don't remember her name, sat down next to her, and turns out her dad died a year prior from pulmonary fibrosis. That's what my dad died from. And so we started talking, but she understood all of that. And when you're vulnerable enough and you're able to say that's what, and it's just an instant thing. And all of a sudden you can connect on a deeper level with people who've gone through that sense of loss. Like Kay lost her dad a year ago about.
Yeah, and I told you, don't be nice to me or I'll cry.
But I understand, Kay, her dad died before mine, but I understand it better now. And those of you who have lost people that have gone through services with you, I understand it better now. I haven't gone through it before, but now it's gone from, yeah, I understand it, to now I understand it a little bit. Murphy was talking about this as Carla was in the hospital. He says, I've always understood when people are sick and the prayer and the difficulty of it is, but now it feels like the well of my spiritual life has been drilled down another 100 feet. And it's deeper and the water is fresher, but right now it's muddy and murky, and I don't quite know how to make sense of this, but over time it'll settle and I'll see things clearer. And that's grief and mourning. And so that's my hope, is as you go home and you think about these things, that maybe you'll talk to your loved one about it. You kind of drill down a little bit deeper. Maybe you'll reflect on some things a little bit more and you'll drill down a little bit deeper. And that maybe that mud will start to settle a little bit, and you'll start to go, oh, I see how that's changed me, or how that can change me, and I know what I need to do now. And I'm going to be kind to myself, not beat myself up going, how come you didn't think of that 5 months ago? Don't do that to yourself. Just allow it to happen. The worst thing you can do is to be closed off to grief and mourning, and just shut it off, because eventually it will come out. And if you shut it off and it comes out the wrong way, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So allow it to just by itself gradually work its way out. And it's interesting, I really believe that your brain is such a powerful organ that it just holds things back until you're ready. And then it lets it out just a little bit at a time. And then you feel it, you emote about it, you share it, you talk about it, and then you reconcile yourself to it. You put that on the shelf and there it is. Okay, I got that. Okay, then something else comes out and you put that there, and things start to transform around you, and you begin to see what God can do inside of your life through all of those things. I put another thing inside of your notes, I believe. Well, maybe I didn't. The resource I want to send you to is Alan Wolfeld's website, Center for Loss. Just Google his name. It's inside. I believe I got it in your notes somewhere. I don't have a copy of that.
That's right here.
Oh, yeah, you got your mourner's 6 things, and then yeah, your Bill of Rights. These are the things you have. The right to experience your own unique grief. You have the right to talk about your grief. You have the right to feel a multitude of emotions. You have the right to be tolerant of your physical and emotional limits. You have the right to experience grief bursts. That means you just kind of go, or you just crater for a moment. It's okay. Let it out. You have the right to make use of ritual. That's the lady who's looking at the picture and talking. That's ritual. That's what they always used to do, and so she kept doing it. You have the right to embrace your spirituality. Of course, if you feel angry at God, find someone to talk to about that and work through some of those emotions. You have the right to search for meaning. Why? What? How? And it's interesting about that. My mom will talk about the timing of my dad's death. And long story short, it was in a perfect window of time. As she looks back on it, she didn't see it at the beginning. In fact, we're all looking at it going, how come this is happening at the worst possible time? We get a month out, and that was the perfect window for that to happen. And so it's okay to ask some of those questions. You have the right to treasure your memories. Don't try to pretend to treasure those memories. Hold on to them. So there's a tape measure in my bedroom. That's my dad's. Okay, you have the right to do that. You have the right to move forward you have the right to move toward your grief and heal. If you don't move toward it, it will chase you down and it will be harder in the end. And so move toward it. Just allow it to have its way in you and don't worry about it. If you cry at a stoplight, it's okay. No one's looking at you anyway. If you cry by yourself, it's okay. Don't sweat it. But you got to find a group of people that you can feel safe with and companion through that. Okay? That's all I have for you tonight. There's really, what Alan Wolfelt does is great in his materials. And if you need some, what we found through this is a booklet that we've started to send to those who experience loss. And there's just some things that you can work your way through 3 months after the loss, 6 months after the loss, 9 months after the loss, and then 10 months after, because you're coming up on the year anniversary. And if you like some of that material, I can get that to you. It's been real helpful for me and my mom and my brothers. We send that out to now those who, since I found it just less than a year ago, I send it out to those who are still grieving and hurting over loss.